Hi, everybody, and welcome to a Belmont Stakes edition of Out of the Gate. I'm your host, Stan Illman. Let's take a look and see what's on tap for this week's episode. We're going to take a look at 5 graded stakes races at Belmont on Saturday with DRF Handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I taking you through the Test of the Champion, the third Jewel in Racing's Triple Crown, the Belmont Stakes, along with the Acorn, the Woody Stevens, the Met Mile, and the Manhattan. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment's going to look at the bloodlines of several of these horses trying to go a mile and a half in the Belmont Stakes. David Aragona will also spotlight the Belmont in his Timeform US segment, and Craig Milkowski of Timeform US, well, he's going to project the pace of the Met Mile. Real exciting show, great weekend of racing. Let's break out of the gate. We break out of the gate with a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day. It's the third Jewel in the Triple Crown. Of course, it's the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes. At a mile and a half, $1.5 million is the purse. This race carded as race number 11 on a star-studded card at Belmont on Saturday. For expanded stakes previews of all the stakes races during this Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike Tacitus, 9 to 5 on the morning line, running late in the Kentucky Derby, goes out for the great Bill Mott, who's looking for 2/3 of this Triple Crown.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Tacitus. He does feel like maybe a horse who got a little unlucky in Kentucky. I didn't think there were that many trips in the race, but I certainly felt like he had one that maybe compromised his chances. Let's go back and look at his Wood Memorial. This is his last Derby prep. He did win 2 Derby preps leading into Kentucky. This is the Wood Memorial. We're going to show you the stretch run. He had a lot of trouble early in this race. I like that he was able to overcome that kind of stuff. You'll see him close this race down at the end. He just seems like a very logical. He's the morning line favorite in the race. I personally wasn't turned on by any of the longer prices in the race. I think Tacitus is supposed to be really, really hard to beat on Saturday. He should be closer to the pace, keep himself in range. I think it's going to be pretty tough to hold off.
And the horse he's going to have to beat and perhaps run down, Matt, is a horse that you were touting for the Preakness from before the Kentucky Derby even. You were absolutely right about War of Will, and you think War of Will can make it 2/3 of this Triple Crown. Isn't he just getting a great trip?
That's kind of the way I look at it. You know, we talked about it a little bit, Dan. It feels like he's going to get a trip similar to what he had in Louisiana in the races when he was very, very impressive, obviously not including that Louisiana Derby. We'll go back to the Preakness a few weeks back now. You're going to see, look, I understand it was a perfect trip up the inside, scraping paint, but I thought he was relatively close to a hot pace. And you see the horses that ran 2 and 3 in there, they came from well out of it. And War of Will was still kicking on at the end. Look, the mile and a half is an unknown for all of these horses, but I like that he should get the jump on Tacitus. But kind of like Mike said, I couldn't find anyone really interesting to go against the top 2. I expect them to do basically what they're supposed to do, run 1-2.
For me, the jury's still out as to how good this 3-year-old crop is. And after the Preakness and Peter Pan, I was looking for a horse like Global Campaign, who pretty much dominated the Peter Pan with a big Beyer speed figure, to run back in the Belmont and take care of business against the likes of War of Will and Tacitus. Well, I don't get Global Campaign, so I'll get the next best thing. Let's go back to the Peter Pan and watch Sir Winston, a horse that is coming from way behind. He's going to make up a lot of ground late, and this is kind of the thing with Sir Winston. He's a bit of a plotter. He's going to be well behind in the early stages of this race, and he's going to need a lot of pace. But this was by far his best race. It came at Belmont Park. He is supposedly training very well, according to Mike Welsh and our clockers on the ground, and he has a stout pedigree that indicates he will run all day long. I think Sir Winston and Intrepid Heart, the 2 horses out of the Peter Pan, are logical alternatives to the big 2 in the Belmont Stakes. 3-year-old fillies take center stage in the Grade 1 Acorn. That's coming up next. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Acorn Stakes for 3-year-old fillies going a 1-turn mile at Belmont on Saturday. It is race number 7. $700,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews of all the stakes races during this week's Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, you've always been a fan of Cookie Dough. You feel that she's going to be more effective turning back in distance. She's run quite well at longer distances, but I know you've been waiting for the cutback.
Yeah, I feel like she's run as well as she has at longer distances simply because she's class and she has some ability. I just think that the distances have been kind of to her undoing, why she hasn't been able to get over the hump. Now this turn back to a one-turn mile, I think this is going to hit her right between the eyes. Let's go back to her most recent run. This was down at Pimlico on Preakness Stakes weekend, excuse me, in the Black Eyed Susan. She's out there, she's setting a pretty honest pace in the grand scheme of things, and you're just going to see her get tired at the end. She gets run over by point of honor. You see Lille try to shoot up the inside. I thought this was a really nice effort from Cookie Dough, given the fact that 9 furlongs I think is just way too far for her. The one-turn configuration I think is much better, and obviously the turn back in distance, and she should be a decent price.
We're all going against the 2 favorites on the morning line. Impressive maiden winner Guarana for Chad Brown, and of course the Kentucky Oaks winner in Serengeti Empress. Mike, I think you could make the argument that Queen of Bees was a bit of a short horse last time out at Churchill.
Yeah, it certainly felt that way. There were reports heading into that race at Churchill that she just wasn't in top form heading in. She had a couple of setbacks along the way. She actually showed up there, and I felt like, all in all, didn't run a poor race. I mean, she was never going to be break even. It just sped clear on that field and never looked back. I thought this filly was pretty game to make a wide run on the turn and then come up the inside late to get third. A pretty good jumping off point for this race coming up on Saturday. Let's go back and look at her win prior to the 8 Bells. She missed some time after this race, but this was a good performance. I like that she was able to raid off the pace early. She came after the leader on the turn. She takes over. She goes on about her business. I liked all 3 of her first starts. The figures put her clearly in the mix against this field, I think. And I think this is a filly off that last race that she needed, could take a big step forward on Saturday.
I liked Queen of Bees last time out, and I agree with you, Mike. I think she was a little bit short. She missed some time into that race, and she should be primed and ready for a better effort on Saturday. I'm just hope it's not primed and ready to defeat my top selection, and that's CC, shipping in from Southern California. This is a very nicely bred filly. She's a half to Papa Clem, I believe, and she came from off the pace to win her career debut with a really nice figure. And in her second lifetime start, her good trainer Michael McCarthy stepped her up against older fillies and mares. We're going to take a look at this race. Remember, she's the only 3-year-old filly in this race, and she is under the gun from the bell. She's been pressured by this horse on the outside. She's going to fight hard all the way down to the wire, and she's just going to be overtaken late by the second choice. She earned a giant Beyer speed figure for this race, a 97. If you believe that number, then she's squarely in the mix on Saturday. And if you just look at the raw times of the races at Santa Anita on this day, she ran her 6.5 furlongs faster than a nice older allowance male, Hot Sean, did a couple of races later. Horses come out of that race to win already. I think the figure's legit. I think CC can sit a stalking trip at what should be a good price. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on, of course, the Belmont Stakes and horses with stout enough pedigrees to get the 1.5 miles. And then Craig Milkowski from Timeform US takes a look at a wide open edition of the Met Mile. Then we'll take a break, but come back. We got plenty of graded stakes action to cover on out of the gate.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you for Out of the Gate for Pedigree Analysis of the Belmont Stakes, the oldest and longest of the American Classics at 1.5 miles. And I do think pedigree and inherited stamina can be important factors here, perhaps more so than the other 2 Triple Crown races. Let's take a look at the field, and of course the only horse to start in all 3 of this year's Triple Crown races will be Preakness Stakes winner War of Will. Now his sire Warfront broke through this year with his first Grade 1 winning males going 2 turns on the dirt in Omaha Beach and War of Will. The stallion is known for some of his runners who go shorter distances, particularly his European juveniles. But War of Will is from a deep female family that has had many long-distance runners. In particular, he's a half-brother to the late multiple stakes winner Tactitious. He won the Birdstone Stakes going 1.75 miles at Saratoga, and then took the Temperance Hill Invitational going 1.5 miles at Belmont. His performances have to give you some more confidence in War of Will as he's stretching out. Now, Tactitious is not to be confused with Tacitus, who was elevated to 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. That colt is by Tappet, who has sired 3 Belmont Stakes winners already. And he's the first foal out of the route-running champion mare that we'll take a look at here, Close Hatches, who scored a pair of Grade 1 wins at Belmont, including this win in the Ogden Phipps. over Kentucky Oaks winner Princess of Silmar and multiple champion Beholder. Now, Close Hatches actually shares a female family with War of Will's Dam Visions of Clarity. They trace their family tree via different branches to the profoundly influential mare Best in Show. That mare is already responsible for a pair of Belmont winners in Jazzle and Champion Rags to Riches, both out of her granddaughter Better Than Honor. Again, more evidence that this is a stamina-laden female family. And lastly, we'll take a look at Intrepid Heart, coming off this third in the Peter Pan. He's one of 3 entrants in the Belmont for sire Tappet, who is the only stallion in the modern history of the Belmont Stakes to sire 3 winners at the Classic, seeking to tie the historic stallion Lexington in the 1800s with 4 winners total. Intrepid Heart also backed up in this spot by his female family. He's out of a mare by Belmont winner Touch Gold, and he's a half-brother to a couple of graded winners, including Commissioner, a close second in the 2014 Belmont. So another strong family. The Belmont Stakes, of course, anchors a star-studded Breeders' Cup quality Saturday card at Belmont Park, and we're taking you through all of that major Grade 1 action right here on Out of the Gate.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski at Timeform US for this week's Belmont Stakes Day edition of Out of the Gate. In my Pace Projector segment this week, I'm going to take a look at the 9th race on Belmont Stakes Day, the Grade 1 Metropolitan Handicap. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner in our condensed version of the Pace Projector, we have it noted in red, and that indicates we think there's going to be a fast pace. Looking at some of the running styles of the horses in here, you can see we have 3 horses listed as leaders, another 3 are listed as trackers, who are horses who expect to rate just off of the pace. So I don't think a fast pace designation is any real surprise. A closer look at the Pace Projector will show that, and this doesn't always happen, the 3 horses we have labeled as leaders are grouped together and shown right at the front of the Pace Projector. We expect them to be battling for the lead. That doesn't always happen, but it does here. So not only do we think the pace is going to be fast, we also think it's going to be contested. Let's take a look at some of the horses in Pace Projector order, starting with number 6, Promises Fulfilled. He's a horse who, as a 3-year-old, he won some Grade 1s. He beat older horses at Keeneland sprinting, and he also led the Breeders' Cup Sprint through the first quarter mile and nearly for the first half mile. So he's a horse I definitely think is going to be a part of the pace. The problem I see with him in here is he's facing Matoli again, who was right there with him last time when he was setting that fast pace and was able to easily beat him. I don't think that extra distance is going to help very much, and neither is facing Matoli again. One of the horses I don't really agree with the Pace Projector on is Coal Front. I don't think he's going to be a horse that's going to challenge for the early lead against the likes of a Promises Fulfilled. I think he's more likely to take up a more tracking position as he did last time in Dubai when he won a Grade 2 going a mile. He got a nice 123 Timeform rating that day, which compares to our Timeform US speed figures on the same scale. But I don't think that's quite good enough. So despite the tracking position, not really agreeing with the Pace Projector, I don't think he's just not quite of this quality to get the job done in here. And he's a horse I won't be using. The horse I will be using and making my top pick, who was tabbed as at 3-1 on the morning line, is Matoli. I hope that our morning line maker, David Aragona, is right, and that a horse we're going to look at in a second, McKinsey, actually does go off favored and I can get some value on Matoli. He really stepped it up last time. He had been beating up on lesser competition, albeit doing it super impressively with fast speed figures, fast times. But there was still some questions about his class, at least in my mind, and he answered them with just raving reviews last time. He was able to sit right off of that fast pace, just 3/4 of a length off of some really fast horses that day. And he put him away into the lane and just won easily, just as he had against lesser company back at Oaklawn. I think he's a real quality horse. I don't think that he's going to have any problem with the additional furlong. That 130 Timeform US speed figure he ran last time out is the tops in the field among those horses last race. And I think he is clearly the horse to beat and the one I'm going to make a win bet here. Let's take a look at a couple of those other horses. I mentioned McKenzie, who's the 5-2 morning line favorite. I have no knocks on McKenzie. He's been consistent. He's been running at longer distances. He's been consistently in the mid 120s. You'll note 4 back, he did turn back to 7 furlongs for his first race after the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he handled it really easily, winning the Grade 1 Malibu. He did show a bit less early speed. He was 10th early, 5 lengths off the pace, but that obviously posed no problem. He's a bit of a problem in the pace projector. I wasn't quite sure how this one was going to rate him. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's closer up, but then again, he might be as far back as we show him. He likes to be up close when he runs longer, but at that shorter distance, he was further back. So I think he's going to be able to handle whatever they throw at him. I think he's a strong contender. My only problem with him is value. A horse I do not like in here is Firenze Fire. It's always a dangerous proposition when it comes to Jason Service trainees, but I think he's just a bit over his head in here. He did run a nice race last time, a 122 time form US speed figure and a stakes win at Belmont, sitting off a slow pace, but that was against much less competition. Most of his big wins have come against lesser. He didn't run particularly well in the BC Dirt Mile. He didn't look very good in his comeback this race this year before rebounding last time out. But based on the fact I just think he's a little bit over his head class-wise, and also I think he likes to sit close to a pace that's going to be fast, I'm not going to use Firenze Fire in here. The one price horse that I am going to consider using is Pavel, number 8. I really like how he ran in Dubai last time. I think it's a bit hidden. The pace wasn't particularly fast that day. It was a track that, as it normally does, was pretty kind to speed horses. Even Gronkowski, who you may remember him from the Belmont Stakes last year, showed surprising early speed and was able to hang on for second that day. I think he's a horse. He has our second best time form US late pace rating in here. So if anybody besides McKenzie is going to get a bump from what the predicted fast pace, it would be Pavel, and he's going to be a big price, so I'm going to use him at my exotics. One horse I want to mention real quick, I didn't make a graphic for him, is Thunder Snow, who's actually in this race. He was the winner of the $12 million Dubai World Cup last time out. It's just interesting. I don't really think he's a contender in here. He's turning back in distance. It's his first race since Dubai. And I just don't think this is a race that fits him very well. He's not really shown prominently in our pace projector, so I didn't get around to getting into detail about him. But I'm sure he's going to take some money, but he's also a horse I don't really like. So to wrap it up here for this week's edition, I'm going to go with Mitoli as my top pick. I'm going to hope to get anywhere around those morning line odds of 3-1. I'd probably even settle for 2-1. I think he's that good. And I'm going to do an exacta box of Mitoli, McKenzie, and Pavel. That does it for me for this week's edition of Out of the Gate, and I'll see you again next week.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, time form US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
So you think horse racing is all about fancy hats and mint juleps?
But horse racing is a big business in the Commonwealth, from the breeding shed to the racetrack.
It's all part of a multi-billion-dollar industry.
So I bet you're wondering, where do I start?
We all have the same answer.
U of L,
U of L,
the University of Louisville.
We're all graduates of the Equine Industry Program.
So what are you waiting for?
The U of L Equine Industry Program has been developing leaders for over 32 years. Apply today.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Woody Stevens Stakes. 3-year-olds going 7/8 of a mile for $400,000. This race carded as race number 8 at Belmont on Saturday, and for expanded stakes previews of all the major races at Belmont all week long, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, I love the job that the Connections have done with Mind Control. He has shown enough ability that you could conceivably have stretched him out, and they have resisted the urge to do so. They feel he's a one-turn horse, and I think they're absolutely right.
Yeah, so far all of his one-turn races have been strong. He only has a couple of defeats going one turn, and he has a number of victories, including this most recent one here. We'll take a look at the Bay Shore. Look, there was a pretty hot pace signed on this day, and sure, he's under the whip right now, but he goes on and does this pretty professional. He goes off and wins by more than a length when it's all said and done. I think you can potentially poke some holes in this field right there that he's running against in the Bay Shore. Much better, obviously, he'll be running in this spot on Saturday afternoon. But I think the tactical sort of ability that this horse, Mind Control, has, doesn't need to go to the lead, can sit just off and still be effective. I think he deserves to be one of the short prices.
Mike, this is the seasonal debut for Grade 1 Champagne winner Complexity for trainer Chad Brown. But Chad has another one in here with Recency, and we both think this horse has a lot of ability.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Complexity does off of the layoff here as he cuts back in distance. But I was a little more interested in Honest Mischief. We'll see what happens. He's going to step up in class here, and he's going to have to do it from the rail. But he feels like a horse who could maybe pull the right trip in this race, sort of second flight, not getting outrun early. Let's go back and look at his maiden win at Keeneland last time. This was a really impressive win. He wins it with a 97 Beyer. He's just going to pour it on in the stretch and leave this field far behind him. I also felt like his career debut, even though he lost as the favorite, I thought he ran really well first time out. He got a little tired at the end of that race, and the horse that ran him down looks pretty good too. But he took a big step forward in his second start. Listen, I have a lot of respect for Mind Control as the favorite in this race. I felt like maybe this horse could give him a run for his money.
Matt, in previous editions of the Woody Stephens Stakes, we have featured hot paces, and horses that are cutting back in distance have made hay coming with one big late run. I think that's what you're hoping for with Hog Creek Hustle.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where potentially the pace will end up being on the hot side, and maybe it's going to help set up for a horse coming from off of it. Hog Creek Hustle's most recent run in the Pat Day Mile, I think, was quite good. He was no match for the winner that day. That was Mr. Money, but Mr. Money ran a hole in the wind. Really, no one was all that close to Hog Creek Hustle afterward, and I thought he made a nice middle move. Now you turn back an extra eighth of a mile to 7/8. We'll go back to his career debut. He's going all the way back to Ellis Park last summer. Keep an eye on the horse on the far outside. This is at 5/8 of a mile. This is a big late finish from a horse making his first lifetime start. I think you're going to see something similar to what we saw in the Pat Day, where maybe he's not coming from 100 out of it, but I think he could be mid-pack, and I think that slightly shorter distance, I think that should work to his advantage. I don't think he's that far off from a time form standpoint. He's going to be a big price.
I'm going with Mike on this one. I like the one Honest Mischief. There weren't too many horses coming from off the pace at Keeneland on April the 6th when Honest Mischief posted that 97 Beyer, and he rated off the pace 4 wide, came with that big run, and you saw what happened in the stretch that day. He ran his 7 furlongs in 22-2. They ran the Grade 3 Commonwealth for older horses that day in 22-4. It was a legit racehorse time. I believe that 97 Beyer. 2 horses have come in that race to win. He's got to overcome the inside post position, but I think Honest Mischief is a horse with that graded stakes potential. We'll see if he can fulfill it in the Woody Stephens. Now let's stretch out a furlong because the Met Mile is an absolute war. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 $1.2 million Metropolitan Handicap, the Met Mile. This might actually be the show stealer on Saturday. I know the Belmont Stakes is the main event, but just take a look at the horses in the Met Mile. It's just one classy runner after another. This race is carded as race number 9. You can get the expanded stakes preview of the Met Mile and all of the other major stakes races this weekend at video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike McKenzie, your morning line favorite for Bob Baffert, who has dominated Belmont Stakes Day the last couple of years.
Yeah, this is a very strong field, as you mentioned, but this is a deserving morning line favorite, I think. I do believe that McKenzie's the horse to beat. He's just been a top-class horse from day one. We're going to show a replay right now of the big cap. This is 2 starts back for him, going 1.25 miles. And listen, he's a really good horse. He can run a really good race going long. But I think he's made it pretty clear that he's better going shorter distances. He's going to lose this race by a nose to Gift Box. They cut him back last time at Churchill. He absolutely crushed a weaker field, going 1 mile and 1/16. But this horse has run twice around one turn and just aired both times. He's a really good horse, and he's the horse to beat in this race.
Matt, you want to talk about a horse for course. The number 7 Firenze Fire is a Grade 1 winner at 1 mile at Belmont. That was the Champagne as a 2-year-old, and his other 2 races over Big Sandy, gigantic triple-digit Beyers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a perfect 3 for 3 at Belmont Park. This is a horse I think also has a running style that's going to be very, very well suited for this mile, especially if the pace does heat up. This is a horse that can break very alertly, but he can come right to hand. I think Arad Ortiz is going to eventually just take back. We'll go back to his most recent run. This is in the Run Happy at 6 furlongs. Look, he's facing an inferior field, but he absolutely buries this field. And guys, I'm of the opinion that he's actually better going slightly longer distances. I think this one-turn mile is right in his wheelhouse. I love him on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm with Matt on this one. I love this race, first of all, right here, even though it was 6 furlongs and he may be a little better 7 or 8 furlongs. I think he fits this race really, really well. He's going to get a right trip in this race.
Firenze Fire, the pick for both Matt and Mike in the Met Mile. I want to give Coldfront a little bit of a chance in this race. Coldfront, I thought, was on the verge of being a one-turn star as a 3-year-old after he crushed the field in the Gallant Bob. He didn't crush, he crushed with a speed figure of 107. Unfortunately, he got hurt in that race. He missed a year and a half, and he has come back, and he hasn't shown any rust in his last few races. Let's go back to the Godolphin Mile, a race where he was 4 wide throughout, and turning into the stretch, it looked like he was in deep, deep water. The horse on the lead, Heavy Metal, loves the track at Maidan. He won the Godolphin Mile in 2018, and Coldfront still has a lot of work to do with a furlong to go, and he's just going to dig down and get this horse. I don't love the inside post position for Coldfront in the Met Mile, but I know he's got some speed, and I think he can tuck in right behind the 2 quick ones, Matoli and Promises Fulfilled. Coldfront hasn't done anything wrong in his last few races. He likes the one-turn mile. I'm going to go with him at 6-1 on the morning line in the Metropolitan Handicap. David Aragona of Timeform US is going to spotlight the Belmont Stakes, and then stay with us. One more Grade 1 to cover, the Manhattan on the Turf.
Hey everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's Timeform US Spotlight. I will of course be taking a look at the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes, the future race at Belmont Park on Saturday as part of a stacked 10 stakes card. It's the final leg of the Triple Crown and features 2 of the top 3-year-olds in this class, the number 9 War of Will and the number 10 Tacitus, who are likely to vie for favoritism. But before we get to those 2, let's start by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector. And you'll see that the long shot, the number 1 Jovia, is predicted to be on the early lead. This horse set a pretty fast pace in the Wood Memorial after he caused some problems in that race, going 2 back in April, and if he shows the same kind of early speed in this Belmont Stakes, he's likely to be racing on a clear early lead in the early going. But there are some stalkers that could be keeping him honest on the front end, including the number 9 War of Will, the Preakness winner, as well as the number 8 Intrepid Heart for Todd Pledger, who's putting blinkers on for the first time in this race, and we do account for horses making blinker switches on the pace projector. He's predicted to be a little bit closer to pace than he would have been without the blinkers, as well as Todd Pledger's other horse, the number 6 Spinoff, who has shown some tactical speed in his prior starts. We'll go on to take a look at the top 2 contenders, beginning with the number 9 War of Will. I don't want to take anything away from the Preakness winner. He earned a 122 Timeform US speed figure last time. That is the highest number earned by any of these 3-year-olds in the Belmont Stakes. I know he got a perfect trip to do it, coming up the rail after saving ground the entire way, but he showed a good turn of foot at the top of the stretch, got past those horses and held off some long shots late. The Preakness field wasn't the toughest race, and I get all of that, but War of Will just really seems to be coming into his own at this point. He obviously had that trouble in the Kentucky Derby that just allows you to draw a line through that race. He had shown talent going back to the springtime, and I just think War of Will makes a ton of sense. And furthermore, he projects to work out another great trip in this race, because you saw the pace projector. He's likely to be sitting 2nd or 3rd in the early going. That's the same kind of trip that he was successful with in the Preakness. I don't think the pace is going to be that fast. The pace projector was not predicting a situation that really favors any kind of running style. There was no red or blue bar. So I just think War of Will makes a ton of sense. The only thing that might catch up to him in this race is the grind of competing in all 3 Triple Crown events, because he's the only horse to do that. Sometimes we don't really know until race day whether that's taken a toll on a horse, but War of Will seems to be doing well, and I think he's one that deserves respect. As does his main rival Tacitus, the number 10. Made this one the slight favorite on the morning line. I think these 2 will be very close in terms of price, though. Tacitus just seems like the kind of horse that's tailor-made for the Belmont Stakes. He's a son of Tappet, who has sired the winners of the last 3 of the last 5 Belmont Stakes. Tappet's just a really good source of stamina in general. His dam, Close Hatches, is that classy Grade 1 winner, champion mare on the dirt. So he really has the pedigree to be a top-class 3-year-old, and he really has shown that he's on the precipice of being that. He was 4th in the Kentucky Derby, elevated to 3rd after a somewhat rough trip. I don't think Tacitus had any serious trouble in the Kentucky Derby, but Jose Ortiz did have to alter course a few times, once around Bodie Express coming to the top of the stretch, and then again somewhere around mid-stretch where he was just trying to angle this horse into the clear inside of Game Winner in the late stages. Tacitus really finished up well in that race. He was running on across the wire, indicated that extra distance is not going to be a major problem for him. He is bred to do it, as I mentioned, and he's just been progressing really quickly. He showed great improvement going back to the Tampa Bay Derby, took another step forward in the Wood Memorial. Perhaps we didn't see all that he had to offer in the Kentucky Derby last time, and I just think he makes a ton of sense as the likely horse to beat in this Belmont Stakes. I could have made him my top pick because I do think he is the most likely winner, but I feel like these two favorites are going to be a little bit overbet, and this is a more competitive race than it might be perceived by some people. And I want to take a look at two other main contenders who I think really deserve consideration. One of those is the number 3 Master Fencer, who surprised a lot of people in the Kentucky Derby by outriding his 58-to-1 odds. He was a horse that I know a lot of people didn't even think belonged in that race based on his seemingly inferior Japanese form, but he took to American racing just fine last time. The Kentucky Derby is a weird race to analyze from a pace standpoint because you see in the Timeform US past performances that red and blue color-coded pace figure showing up in the same running line. That's something you don't often see, and that's showing there because the race went so fast in the early going and then slowed down to such a pronounced degree in the middle part of the race that it actually compromised Master Fencer a little bit because he was gaining momentum coming around the far turn of the Derby and just had nowhere to go as horses were backing up in his face in a really bunched field coming to the quarter pole. Once Julian LaPerue picked that path through inside and found a clear running lane for Master Fencer, he was really finishing up pretty fast at the end of that race. I mean, looking at how fast horses finish up the Derby going back a number of years, his final quarter mile is one of the fastest that we've seen in the Kentucky Derby in the past decade. So he really suggested that day that he might be able to stretch out in distance further and can handle this 1.125 distance. We'll just see if he can do it over a fast racetrack on Saturday. I'm using all of those aforementioned horses, but my top pick is the number 7, Sir Winston. I really liked this horse's race in a Peter Pan last time, and I think it signals that the light bulb was just finally gone on for a horse that had always shown some potential. That Peter Pan was a race that featured an honest pace, but it wasn't really a fast pace that set up for a closer by any means. You don't see any red color-coded pace figures in his running line, and Sir Winston got so close to the winner of Global Campaign at the end of that race because he put in a remarkable closing fraction. His final 3 furlongs were run in 35 1/5 seconds according to Trackus. That's the kind of closing split that you're accustomed to seeing in turf races, not dirt races. I know that the track was pretty fast on May 11th at Belmont Park, but that's still a really noteworthy closing split for Sir Winston, and it's the kind of closing speed that we had never seen out of him in his prior races. He had showed some hints of ability in some of those Derby preps. He was running on well at both the end of the Withers and the Tampa Bay Derby without really threatening, and he just seems like he's finally putting it all together. It seems like he really got along with Joel Rosario last time, and Joel Rosario is the kind of rider that gets along with some horses and doesn't get along with others, and it just seems like these two were a really great pair, a good match last time out in the Peter Pan. Sir Winston is bred to get the 12 furlong distance. He's by good stamina, influence awesome again. His dam sire is a Belmont winner of Fleet Alex. His dam wanted to run all day. I just think there are a lot of things pointing to Sir Winston in this race, and he might get a little bit ignored as Mark Cassie's second stringer, hoping to get somewhere between 10 and 12 to 1 on him, and I think we'll do that given the amount of money that War of Will and Tacitus are likely to garner. So it's the number 7, Sir Winston for me as my pick in the Grade 1 Belmont Stakes on Saturday at Belmont Park. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Let's throw up the field for the Grade 1 Manhattan Stakes. It's the race preceding the Belmont, carded as race number 10 at beautiful Belmont Park on Saturday. $1 million is the purse. We're going 10 furlongs on the inner turf. You can catch all the expanded stakes previews of all the major races at Belmont this week at video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Bricks and Mortar, one of the top horses in the entire country, dirt or turf, is likely to be favored in this race, Mike. Chad Brown's got several others, though. You want Chad at a price.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Bricks and Mortar, not going to be easy to beat in this race. He is a legit morning line favorite in this spot, looking for his 3rd Grade 1 of the year. I'm not way against that horse. just want to give a little chance to one of the other Chad Brown runners, Olympico, a recent import from France. He wasn't a top-class horse over there. I feel like he really adapted to American racing. The Lasix on. Let's look at his stateside debut, the Fort Marcy. It's a grade 3. This is very soft turf course, and there's a real chance that he just really appreciated it and took advantage a little bit in this race. But this horse was loaded all the way around the track in this spot, and you're going to see Kendrick Carmouche right now. He didn't go around horses. He stayed in. And he wins this race very easily. This is a very strong finish from this horse. I liked this effort, 102 buyer. I'm going to buy into this horse right now. We'll see. This is a big test for him on Saturday. I'm going to buy into him right now and hope he can back this race up.
Olympico ran down his stablemate, of course, also trained by Chad. He's got all the good turf horses, Robert Bruce in that race, but that race was over soft ground. And Matt, I think you and I both agree, Robert Bruce does not like any given the ground at all.
Yeah, to me, that really is the key for this horse. If he gets firm turf, I think any one of his firm turf efforts is good enough to win this race. If it's less than firm, I just think he's a shell of himself. We'll go back to the Turf Classic from last fall. This is a race where Channel Maker comes and he's basically out there on the front end. It looks like Robert Bruce is going to loom up and just roll by, but his action on this ground just doesn't seem to be all that smooth compared to the way that he moves on firm turf. Robert Bruce reminds me a lot of another Chad Brown horse who's not going to run in this race, but his name's Almanar, and he's a horse that you get him on any kind of ground that has some give in it, he just can't run. You get him on firm turf, he's a world beater. I feel like Robert Bruce might fit the same bill, and maybe he gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. I'm not suggesting he'll be a giant price, but I could see him being in that 9 to 2, 5 to 1 range.
It's going to be tough to beat Chad in the Manhattan. I'm going to try to do it, however, with the 10 Channel Maker, who we just saw beat Robert Bruce, going 12 furlongs in the Joe Hirsch. His most recent race was at 11 furlongs in the Man of War, and we're going to take a look at that race right now. The pace setter, the European Invader Hunting Horn, opened up a large lead. Channel Maker was relatively close to this fast pace, stalking in third. He still has some work to do in the stretch, but this is what he is. He's going to stay on, and he's going to come with a good, strong run to collar Hunting Horn and then hold off the strong late bid of Arklow, who's going to run on Friday in the Belmont Gold Cup. Key to this race is twofold for Channel Maker. Can he stay close to the pace going 1.25 miles? It's what he's done recently at 1.5 miles, and I think he has it in him to stay motivated and close. And B, can he run as well going 10 furlongs as he has at 11 or 12? I think he can do that as well. Channel Maker, 9 to 2 on the morning line for the great team of Joel Rosario and Bill Mott. We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRFTV's latest offerings. Please follow on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.